Genesis continues to take aim at the German competitors. This compact crossover, the GV70, is going to be your primary competition against the BMW X3 M40i, as well as the Audi SQ5. As always, I'm going to go through this thing from the outside in. I'm going to talk about what it's been like to live with for the past week. I'm also going to talk about how some of the features and space compare against that competition. This one here is a 2024. Talk about what's new for 2024, but I will also talk about the differences for 2025, as there are minimal changes for the 2025 model year for the GV70. Where are you going? Where are you going? I need you. Get back here. The pricing for the GV70 for 2024 and 2025 is going to be about the same. It's going to be pretty on par with the SQ5 and the X3 M40i from BMW. So the SQ5 with everything on it, with all the features that you get here, is going to be a little bit more expensive by a couple $1,000s. The X3, they really sort of nickel and dime you on everything. It's not just this trim level gets you these features. You really have to buy everything individually, which is good for customization, but then by the end, you're spending a lot more money. But of course, features aren't everything, so we'll get into that as we go here. Powering the GV70 is a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6, makes 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque. There is also a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. I'm going to focus on the V6 because that's what we have in this tester here. And this one is going to be on par with your X3 M40i in terms of power, in terms of torque. That one's a little bit more if you look at the dyno sheet, but this one is pretty close. It's going to make more power, more torque than the Q5, unless you're jumping up into the SQ5, but then you're going up in price quite a bit as well. This one is going to be mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission exclusively, and it's going to be powering all 4 wheels. All-wheel drive is the only way to get this. This is a rear-biased all-wheel drive system, which is good news. We'll talk about that a little bit more during the drive. Fuel economy, I've been getting like 18, 19, though it has been really hot here, and I've had like all the things on, like the AC at full blast and the cooled seats on all the time, and I've been pushing it quite a bit, but I've only been getting about 18, 19. The size of this car is going to be pretty on par with the competition. That's going to be your BMW X3. It's going to be your Audi Q5, about 185 inches overall. It's sort of right in between. You know, the Q5's slightly smaller, the X3 is slightly bigger, but it's really pretty close here. The wheelbase is a lot longer on this one, though, at 113 inches, which should help with the ride quality, should help with the planted feel. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the drive. Even though the X3 and the Q5 are the primary competition, it does look a hell of a lot like a Macan. I saw a Macan on the road the other day in the same color, and I thought it was one of these until I got up close to it. But that's really going to be another price bracket if you're going to be jumping quite a bit in cost if you want the Macan that's not a 4-cylinder that's going to compete with this one a little bit more. But the only real changes for 2024 when you're looking at this thing from the outside, you're going to get these bigger 21s on the Sport Advance. So if you're in the base trim, you're still going to get 19s. Now the Sport Advance gets you the 21s, and this one, the Sport Prestige, is going to give you the 21s anyway. I'm not a big fan of the dark wheels on a dark car with dark calipers, so I wish there were some different options for the caliper color, for the wheel color, but I do like this wheel design quite a bit, and I always love to see that caliper poking through there. But the press materials here had plenty of words like sporty and aggressive and speed, and so all these lines here are going for sportiness and aggressiveness and just a quick look to it. Overall, it's got this coupe-like shape. You know, it's 4 doors and it's a crossover. I'm just glad they didn't go full drop off like a lot of the competition is doing nowadays, and even the GV80 now has an option for the coupe SUV. It just eats into so much of your space. I don't really understand the coupe SUV, but at least they just kept it subtle there. You do get the black roof rails, you get the dark chrome all around in the Sport Prestige. Really a nice looking car. The only issue I have with this dark chrome on here, though, is it gets fingerprints all over it, and you can kind of see those like as you're walking up to the car, but you do get the touch to unlock from the inside. You get touch to lock from the outside, and that is only on the front. You don't get that on the back. You still get the dark chrome, but you don't get the touch. And as you can see, the mirrors do power fold. That's going to be standard on all the different trim levels. And you see, as I walk up to it, it will actually unlock and power unfold there on its own. We also have the 360 cam on here, but that is not going to be in all the trim levels, unfortunately. But you do get the auto dimming mirrors, you get the blind spot monitoring, you get the power folding, you get the LED turn signals in all the different trim levels. Really is a nice looking car from the side. It's got like an aggressive look to it, a sporty, maybe all the buzzwords from the press materials. The back end here, again, this is sort of really where you get a lot of the Macan vibes going on, but it does have this sort of Genesis signature lights going on. It's got this pattern down here that is very specific to Genesis, so it does have that identity going on. It's got the nice big exhaust tips. Love to see those. We've got parking sensors across the back in the upper two specs. You do have the rear wiper. Always love to see a rear wiper on a crossover or a hatchback. You got the brake light up here. These are going to be LED tail lights, by the way, and your all-wheel drive badge, of course. They have this clever hidden button back here in order to open the tailgate. It took me like 5 minutes to figure out how to open the tailgate. There are a couple of options there. Actually, you can press the button there. You can use the button on the key fob, or you have the smart open system. So all this is going to be standard even if you're in the base sport trim level. But the smart system is you stand here and you stare at the back of the car and you kind of look like an idiot for a second, and then it just opens right up. But that is only going to work if it is enabled through the infotainment system. So like right now I don't have it enabled, so I would just walk up to the car, look like an idiot for a very long time, and then finally just sit there and press the button. But handy feature to have if you got your hands full of groceries, you're holding kids' hands or whatever it is that you're doing, you got your hands full and you can't get to the button or you can't get to your key fob for whatever reason. And that's going to open up into just under 30 cubic feet of space. It's going to be really on par with the X3. It's going to be quite a bit more than the Audi Q5. So really tons of space back here. This is a lot for a compact crossover. You do have some pull levers on the sides in order to drop the seats down, because we do have the 60-40 split on the seats. Underneath here, we have some tools, and then underneath that hidden compartment, we do have an actual real spare. So glad to see that they're keeping the spare alive. There's also one 12-volt back here, a little bit of netting, pretty standard stuff going on. Then you got the button to close. The front end here is where it really differentiates itself as a Genesis vehicle. It's got this classic Genesis front end here. I really love the look of this front end, and it's all functional cooling, nice and open, as well as down here, nice and open. You do have the front parking sensors and the upper two specs here. This is not open though, just fake vents for fake air, though there is some venting on the side here. Got the LED headlights, LED daytime running lights, auto high beams are all going to be standard. Do wish it had adaptive lights. I wish they turned with you. That does seem like something that should at least be optional on a luxury vehicle here in 2024. Do love this overhang. Like the hood kind of has these overhanging pieces. It just looks like they kind of mismatched it. That's a little odd there. Not a big fan of that. Haven't updated the logo yet. I assume that's coming the next year or two. But if you want to check out what that looks like, you can look at the G70 video that I released a couple of weeks ago. But overall, great looking front end. Very recognizable as a Genesis vehicle here. I mentioned you can open the hatch with the key right here. Nice and easy to use. I love their nice hefty keys. Nice and simple. And the buttons are laid out well. Other things you can do on here, you do have a panic button, of course. You can control your lights. You do have, you lock it up and hold down this hold button to start it up. Remote start is standard, and it's right here on the key fob. Always love to see that. Plus, this one has the take a walk with your car function. So if you ever just get lonely and you want to go take a walk, you don't have anyone to take a walk with, and you can do that. Or it also is pretty helpful for parking in tight spaces, I guess, in case you think you're not going to be able to open or close the door. But of course, the best part is just being able to remote start the car right from the key, not having to pull out any kind of app, deal with any kind of subscription, just right there on the key. You can also turn it off with that same button. The inside of the GV70 is a lovely place to be. This is legit luxury in here. It is wonderful. This is the Sport Prestige trim level. I know not everybody wants to see the totally loaded out top spec. It's a lot easier for me to show you features when I have them available than it is to say, oh, this feature is available, but I can't show you what that looks like. The other thing here is that this is the car that I can get a hold of and actually get my full opinions on. But I will give you a link down below to give you an idea of what the differences are between the Sport Prestige, and the Sport Advanced. But it's a really nice interior here. We have this red Sevilla leather. It looks wonderful. I love that companies are putting red into their interiors, especially when it's like this. It looks a lot brighter than it really is when you're looking on camera, but in person is a really nice looking red. It is the Napa leather, as I mentioned, and all the touch points are like this leather all over the place. So really a nice, classy feeling interior. I love the design on the seats here, and all these elliptical shapes are taken from airplanes. I guess that it's inspired by the sort of aerodynamic portions of the airplane wings, all the elliptical shapes here. And then they went with this like horizontal pattern through here, through the vents, to sort of give you this feeling of width, to make it feel nice and open and wide in here, because horizontal lines make things feel very wide. I am not a huge human, but it feels like plenty of space in here. I do wish that they would have gone all the way across with the actual vent though. This is blocked off through here and they just went with the design. But I do like that pattern all the way through, and the red stitching, the red leather all over. Really is a nice looking interior. It's a nice feeling interior. The switch gear here is wonderful. Genesis does a great job on the switch gear for their cars, for the steering wheels, with the rollers, with the switches, with the buttons, easily, nicely laid out, easy to use and easy to interact with. Nice metal paddle shifters, nice knurling on the knobs here. And anytime you change a setting, this is another thing Genesis does very well. It tells you what you're doing through the gauge cluster. If you change your light settings here, it'll show you. If you change your wiper settings, it'll show you exactly what setting you're on. Seems like a little thing, but it's really, really nice to have. But this one also, being the Sport Prestige, has the full digital gauge cluster. The other trim levels, it's going to be half digital, half analog. And I honestly like the analog a lot better. I think it looks a lot nicer, where it has like the silver with the red pins, and it just has a little bit of a classier feel to me. I know they're trying to keep it classy with these sort of crystal gauges going on, and the gauges can change. It's a little bit more versatile. They can change as you cycle through the different driving modes in here. But I really like the analog look. But if you're someone that likes a digital gauge, this one is a nice digital gauge. It has tons of information in there that you can cycle through for your driver's assist feature, your fuel economy, your temperatures, your tire pressure. You can nerd out over which wheels are driving at any given time, since this one is a rear biased all-wheel drive system. It has everything that you could possibly need in there and then some. And the infotainment screen here, though, this is going to be the same no matter which trim level you get. It's a giant screen. Genesis does a great job with the infotainment. It has these nice big blocks with big pictures that are easy to figure out what everything does. It's touch, it's quick, has these nice little graphics going on. You can use the touchscreen or you can use the knob down here. I do wish that the touchscreen was a little bit closer, so that when I do use touch, like if I'm using Android Auto or something, it's a lot easier to touch than it is to use the knob. Your driver's assist settings you can update through there. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, I mentioned Android Auto already, but those are wired still. Genesis is still using wired Android Auto, wired Apple CarPlay. Really hope that there is an over-the-air update for that, because those really should be wireless at this price point in this type of a sort of a luxury car here. You can update your custom driving mode through there. Your HVAC down here, has a mix of physical knobs and buttons as well as this digital thing. It does have haptic feedback, which is helpful. So you know when you're pressing something, you get that little bit of a vibration back. But I do wish that this was just all physical knobs and buttons. If it's going to be digital, at least it's always available. So, but you do have a few of these sort of glossy buttons. It's the other thing. I wish it wasn't all glossy because it's all fingerprinty and dusty. I know Genesis can do knobs and buttons and switches very well, so I wish that they would have just left that with knobs and buttons and switches. Down here, you do have a lot of physical knobs and buttons and switches for you're changing your drive modes, for your accessing your camera very easily for parking. This one does have the full 360 surround view. Getting through some of your infotainment menus. You do have the knob that's sort of dial knob, they call it. Meticulously crafted jewel in the press materials, kind of a funny way to put it, but it is it's fine. You know, you get used to the twist instead of the transmission gear shift or lever. Everybody's doing their own thing. You get used to the twist and then the button for park, but it's nice. It is nice that it's lit at least, so at night, then, you know, with this being clear and sort of crystally with the backlight, you can actually see what you're doing. But it's a little bit odd having the transmission shifter as a dial right behind another dial for the infotainment. I mentioned this in the GV80 video as well. It just seems a little bit dangerous to have those both next to each other. I'm sure there's some kind of lockout, but I haven't tried, you know, shifting into reverse while I was on the highway or anything like that. You got wireless charger down here with some USB-A's, some cup holders that are way out of your way off to the side. Another 12 volt in here is sort of suede going on. You do have a spot for your sunglasses. You got your auto dimming mirror with home link. These are things you expect at this price point. Micro suede header, not in all the trim levels, only in this top spec, unfortunately, but you do have that here, as well as the sunroof. The sunroof is going to be in all of the trim levels, and that is massive, massive. Always love to see a nice big sunroof, and one that goes all the way back to the back seat so the kids can get a little sun as well. And it definitely has some UV protection in there, and it's not super, super bright sun coming through. We do have the Lexicon sound system. It's like a premium Harman Kardon. So if you're shopping like an X3 or a Q5, the X3 gets a Harman Kardon sound system, so this one should be a little bit better than that. I haven't been in an X3 in quite some time. The Q5, I really like the Bang & Olufsen sound system in the Q5, so I would probably pick that if you're an audiophile over this with the Lexicon. But the Lexicon, if you're set on the GV70, then the Lexicon is, of course, the one to get, and that's only going to be in your upper two trim levels. This sort of black carbon through here is going to look a little bit different in the other two trim levels. We do have memory seats in this one. And we've got the heads-up display in this one only because we are in the top spec. These seats, though, either way, no matter what trim level, you do get the power adjustable seats. You get power bolsters. I love being able to adjust the bolsters. You have power thigh extensions, as the Ergo Motion, which is like your massage seats. They're heated and they are ventilated. Love, love, love to see that, especially since it's been super hot here. I've been having the ventilated seats on all the time. If you have passengers getting in and out all the time and adjusting the passenger seat, then you can adjust those for the next person. Maybe it's pushed up all the way because you were trying to get your kid in the back. Now somebody's going to sit in this seat and you want to be able to push that back. Nice to have that little adjustability there. They do have climate control back there only because we're in the top spec. The 3-zone climate is only in this top trim level, unfortunately. But it is nice to have that there. So they have vents, they have control over the climate. They have some USBs as well. Those back seats are also heated only because we are in the top spec. Those back seats are just over 37 inches of legroom, which is right in between the Q5 and the X3. The Q5 is going to give you a little bit more space. The X3 is going to give you a little bit less space. It's a little bit tight, or it's going to be tight if you are on the taller side. But for me, in sort of average height at 5'7", I fit totally fine back there. Behind myself, I've got plenty of room. I've got forward-facing seats back there. No problem with those at all. They do have the center cup holder back there as well, the drop-down cup holder. And with this being the top spec, they also have the window shades, those manual window shades that they can pull up back there. But generally speaking, this interior is just so nice. It's so nice in here. It is a very nice place to be. I just wish there were a couple things. I wish for a wireless Android Auto, but you can get a dongle to fix that. And I wish that this wasn't all glossy and digital, but it is still easy to use and it's always available. So really my interior issues are pretty minor, a little bit nitpicky. Generally speaking, interior is a really, really nice spot to be. As always, I've been driving this around for the last week, dropping the kids off at school and going to my day job because YouTube is not paying my bills. So I really feel like I've gotten the full picture here. And this thing has been great to commute in. It rides pretty well here. It is a little bit on the rough side for a luxury car. It's still going to be better than the X3 in terms of ride quality, but it's a little bit worse than the Audi. Audi really has the ride quality thing down. But it does have the electronically controlled suspension with road preview. It's kind of a weird term that makes you think it's like, I don't even know, some kind of AI thing. But what all that means is that it's trying to anticipate the bumps and things and adjust your suspension, adjust your dampers to accommodate all the bumps and things that are coming up. It's fairly quiet in here for the most part, but once you get up on the highway speeds, if the roads are a little bit rougher, it does get pretty loud. Again, the Audi is going to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more comfortable. This one will be it'll be sort of in between the Audi and the BMW in terms of noise. One thing I keep hearing about online is the sunroof kind of hum that people have gotten in their Genesis cars. I've never experienced this before in all the Genesis cars I've been in, but this time I finally am hearing it. So hopefully the dealerships can fix that. But that is a kind of an annoying hum on the highway. Like, anytime you get over 70, it starts humming. But again, like, I've never had that any of the other Genesis products I've been in. So hopefully that's like a fixable thing. It's very quick. I mean, it's plenty peppy. This 3.5 liter engine. And when you put it into sport mode, then it helps with all the throttle lag. There's like a little bit of throttle lag, like there is with pretty much any automatic transmission that doesn't have a mild hybrid system. And that's where the BMW is going to be quicker and it's going to feel more responsive because it has that electric motor that can kick in immediately. You don't have to wait for the turbos to spool up. You don't have to wait. There's just like no kind of lag at all. Whereas this one, there's a tiny bit of lag when you're in the normal mode, but again, it does kind of keep you from shoving your passenger's head back into their seat. Whereas when you put it into sport mode, it'll get a little quicker, a little bit more responsive. And the transmission here is pretty snappy too. It's very quiet, it's very smooth, no problems with that. It's not like a jerky transmission or anything. But when you do have it in sport mode, it'll be a little bit more aggressive. There's also an individual mode you can put it into if you want it to be, if you want to tailor everything, like your suspension, your transmission, the sound, everything. And I always talk about how I like to nerd out over what the wheels are doing in all these videos. I'm always talking about that, I know. But this one is definitely a heavy rear bias, especially when you put it into sport mode or sport plus, and it'll get even more rear biased. Which is great for maneuverability. It handles pretty well and maneuvers very well. It's not going to be quite as sharp as the BMW. Those, like, the engineers at BMW are just like magic when it comes to the chassis and how those things can corner even though they're so big and heavy. This thing is definitely top heavy, so if you're somebody that like pushes your crossover hard through corners and canyon roads, then this one, you know, you're going to want to lean towards the BMW probably, but most people probably aren't doing that, and this is plenty quick enough, plenty responsive enough as a daily driver. Now, it also has great driver's assist features here for 2024. The front collision assist as well as the highway drive assist 2 became standard. Highway drive assist is awesome. Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, I talk about this in all of those videos that I make. The highway drive assist is like your lane centering with your adaptive cruise, and then you've got the little dots all around that tell you like where everyone is that's around you. So it works super well. It keeps you very well centered in the lane, which seems like kind of a dumb thing that people like who needs a system to keep you centered in your lane. You're like making these tiny little adjustments. But once you experience a good system, you realize how helpful it is to just have that, just keeping you in the middle of the lane. Now, the GV80 had like a lane change assist as well. This one doesn't have that. But other than that, this one pretty much has everything that the GV80 had. It's got the auto high beams. It's got the blind spot monitoring with the rear cross traffic alert. The systems don't get super in your way. The safety systems here, they're like just the right amount of assistance without being annoying, without being like overbearing. Especially like the Audi will just like beep randomly, and you don't know what it is, and they have a lot of symbols that are a little bit confusing. They're not like the most intuitive, whereas this one is. Genesis and Hyundai and Kia are very good at communicating what it's beeping at you for. It also has the lane shove assist, collision avoidance, like the reversing collision avoidance, front collision avoidance, blind spot collision avoidance. So it has all these systems to help keep you safe if you're about to hit something, which is great. I would recommend just not hitting something, but in case of an unexpected situation, it would, you know, it'll kick in. I mentioned in the interior section, I haven't had an issue with grabbing the wrong knob for infotainment versus the gear shift. Finally happened yesterday. I shifted into neutral when I was trying to get to something in the infotainment. So again, I really don't like this system having two knobs that work the same, that are right next to each other, and one is something critical like your transmission and one is infotainment. That's something that you probably adjust fairly regularly while you're driving, so not really a great system there. This one being the Sport Prestige, we also have the heads-up display that I mentioned in the interior. That will also show you that highway drive assist stuff where it has the little blocks around you that show you like where everyone is around you. So it's like you don't really have so many blind spots, even though the visibility here is pretty good. But it's nice having that extra little peace of mind knowing exactly where everyone is. Can get a little bit distracting because they're like constantly shifting around you, but you do kind of get used to it. And then it'll show you whether you have different driver assist features on, like your adaptive cruise, like your lane centering. It'll show you your current speed. It'll show you the speed limit. This one, being one of the upper two specs, also has the blind spot view camera. I feel like that should just be standard in the luxury version of this car. Like the sport trim should really get that as well. But that's a great system where it will show you a camera view in the cluster of whatever's in your blind spot. So again, between the blind spot monitoring, in the heads-up display, in the mirror, in this cluster here, and the little blocks floating around to tell you, you know, where someone is, where people are around you, and it's got the blind spot collision, so it's very good. Like, you've got your blind spot covered in this thing. I mentioned it doesn't have a mild hybrid system, but it does have the auto start stop. It's usually when you have an auto start stop, they get kind of annoying. They're like not always ready for you when you come to a stop. So like the X3, that one's just like always ready for you because the electric motor can get you moving. You don't have to wait for the gas engine to spark up. But this one, as far as fully gas powered cars go, this one is very smooth. You kind of have to be looking for it to know that the auto start stop is happening, because it doesn't give you the big shudder, and it's typically ready pretty quickly when you're coming from a stop. The driving experience overall here, it's comfortable, it's peppy, it's a great place to be for a commute or even for a long trip. The seats are great for a long trip as well. Got all the right driver's assist features, and they're not super intrusive. I wish it was a little bit quieter, especially whatever's going on with the sunroof, and it's not gonna like blow through canyons the way an X3 does, but it's very nice. It's certainly a nice place to be for a commute. At the end of the day, if you want the quietest and most comfortable, I would lean towards the Audi. If you want the best dynamically, if you're someone that likes to push your cars with that immediate response, the quick shifts, and you like to throw things around a little bit more, then I would lean towards the BMW, the X3. If you want the best value, you get the Genesis. This is what Genesis does so well. They don't sacrifice too much in any one area, but you still get all these great features. They're finally going to get wireless CarPlay added next year, but you can fix that with a dongle. But you got all these nice comfort features. It's a comfortable place to be. It's plenty peppy, great design. It really is a great value. All right, now you can go.